Before this story begins, I want you to take a deep, grounding breath with me. Close your eyes for a second and imagine the life you've built. The years of sacrifice, the early mornings, the late nights, the way you and your partner looked at each other when you finally hit that savings goal. Now, imagine finding out that while you were celebrating that security, your partner was already spending it on someone else. Not just an affair, but a secret life where you were relegated to a supporting character in your own home. Before we dive into the wreckage of Juliet's marriage, I have to ask, have you ever felt like a stranger in your own house? Have you ever looked at the person sleeping next to you and realized you don't know them at all? If you've survived a betrayal that felt like a physical blow to the chest, drop a survivor in the comments. We are a community here at Echoes of Trust and Betrayal, and we don't just tell stories, we process the truth together. Tell me where you're listening from. Your strength helps someone else who is currently in the dark. My name is Juliet. For 12 years, I was the responsible one. I was the one who managed the spreadsheets, the one who remembered birthdays, the one who believed that love was a partnership of equals. I thought we were building a castle. I didn't realize Marcus was just using my stones to build a bridge to someone else. This is the anatomy of a betrayal that cost $80,000 and one soul. It all started on a quiet Tuesday. It was a quiet Tuesday afternoon. You know the type, the kind of day where the air feels heavy with normalcy. The sun was hitting the living room floor at that specific 4 o'clock angle, illuminating the dust motes and the scuff marks on the hardwood. I remember looking at a particular scratch near the dining table. We had made that scratch 3 years ago when we bought the mahogany table. Marcus had insisted on it, even though it was over our budget. "It's an investment piece, Juliet," he had said, flashing that boyish grin that always made me cave. "We'll host Thanksgiving dinners here for the next 30 years. I remember feeling so cherished in that moment, thinking about our future grandchildren sitting at that table. I was in the laundry room, the hum of the dryer providing a steady, comforting white noise. The scent of lavender and warm cotton filled the small space. I loved folding laundry. It was the one part of my day where I felt completely in control. Everything was clean, everything was folded, everything was in its place. I was stacking Marcus's work shirts, the expensive ones he'd started buying recently, claiming they were necessary for his executive image. I didn't mind the cost. I was proud of him. I had worked 2 jobs for the first 5 years of our marriage to put him through his MBA. I remember those years vividly, the smell of stale coffee, the way my eyes burned from double shifts at the hospital, the way we shared a single bowl of pasta because we were saving for the dream. The dream was our $80,000 savings account. We called it our forever fund. It was our shield against the world. Every time we reached a new milestone, $10,000, $20,000, we'd have a little celebration. Marcus would hold my hands and say, "We're doing it, Jules. No one can touch us." I felt like we were invincible. I was folding a pair of his socks when the phone buzzed on the granite countertop. It wasn't a normal ring. It was the rapid-fire vibration of multiple text messages coming in at once. I didn't pick it up immediately. I finished the shirt I was working on, smoothing the sleeves with my palms. I thought it might be my sister or a work notification, but the buzzing didn't stop. It was persistent, almost aggressive. When I finally wiped my hands on my apron and reached for the device, the name on the screen wasn't Marcus. It wasn't a contact at all. It was just a string of numbers. I hesitated. My thumb hovered over the screen. There was a cold knot forming in the pit of my stomach, a primal instinct that the piece of my laundry room was about to be shattered. I swiped up. The first message was only 10 words long, but it felt like 10 knives.
I'm sorry to bother you. You deserve to know the truth."
I stood frozen in the hallway, the light from the phone screen casting a ghostly blue glow on my face. The grandfather clock in the corner ticked. Tick, 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 each second sounding like a hammer. My mind raced through 1,000 possibilities. Was this a scam? A prank? Maybe a disgruntled employee of Marcus's trying to stir up trouble? I waited, my breath hitched in my throat, watching the little gray typing bubbles dance at the bottom of the screen. They seemed to dance for an eternity. Then the second message landed, and the world slowed down. "Your husband paid for my wedding." I actually laughed, a short, sharp, hysterical sound that echoed in the empty house. It was too absurd. Marcus? The man who complained if I bought the name-brand paper towels? The man who had spent the last 6 months talking about how inflation was eating us alive and we needed to tighten our belts? He wouldn't pay for a stranger's wedding. He wouldn't even pay for a premium car wash without a coupon. I was about to type back "wrong number" when the third message appeared. "I found your name on the bank statements, Juliet. He told me you were his sister. He said you handled the family inheritance and that you were the reason he couldn't access his full funds yet. He told me you lived in the guest wing of the house because you were unstable and he was taking care of you." I felt the blood drain from my head so quickly I had to lean against the wall. Unstable. Sister. My 12 years of marriage were being rewritten in a text thread by a stranger. I thought back to every business dinner Marcus had attended in the last year. I thought about the late nights at the office where he wouldn't answer his phone because he was in the zone. I remembered the time I found a receipt for a high-end jewelry store in his pocket. He had told me it was a gift for a client's wife. I had kissed him and told him he was so thoughtful. I felt a wave of nausea so strong I had to slide down the wall and sit on the floor. I wasn't his partner. I wasn't his wife. In the story he told the world, I was a burden he was forced to carry. I was a sister he kept in the shadows while he played the role of the wealthy, generous groom. Then came the photo. It was a large file, and I watched the progress bar crawl across the screen with a sense of impending doom. I wanted to turn the phone off. I wanted to throw it in the trash and pretend I never saw it, but I couldn't look away. When the image finally snapped into focus, it felt like the floor had disappeared beneath me. It was a professional photograph, the kind taken by a high-end wedding photographer. The setting was the Rosewood Vineyard, a place I knew all too well. 6 months ago, Marcus had brought home a brochure for that very vineyard. He'd left it on the kitchen island, and when I saw it, I was delighted. "Are we going there for our anniversary?" I had asked him. He had looked at me with a strange expression, not guilt, but a sort of cold calculation, and said, "No, Jules, my company is looking at it for a corporate retreat. I just brought the brochure to see what you thought of the layout. It's way too expensive for us, obviously." But in the photo, it wasn't a corporate retreat. It was a wedding. There were white silk drapes billowing in the breeze, gold-rimmed chairs arranged on a perfectly manicured lawn, and a floral arch that looked like something out of a magazine. It was a wall of blush-colored roses, hydrangeas, and lilies. I recognized the flowers. They were my favorites. And there, standing under that arch, was my husband. He was wearing the navy blue suit I had bought him for his 35th birthday. He looked radiant. He looked light. He was standing beside a woman I had never seen before. She was young, maybe mid-20s, with long dark hair and a smile that looked genuinely happy. She was holding a bouquet of those same blush roses. Marcus had his hand on the small of her back. It was a gesture of intimate support, a way he used to hold me. I zoomed in on his face. He wasn't just there, he was the groom. The photo was taken during the rehearsal or perhaps a private photo shoot. My heart wasn't just breaking, it was being ground into the dirt.
every sacrifice I had made, every double shift I had worked to put him through school, every cent I had saved, it was all right there in that photo. It was the white silk, the gold chairs, and the roses. He had taken my life and gifted it to someone else.
The phone buzzed again, but I could barely see the screen through the blur of my tears. I wiped my eyes with the back of my hand, leaving a smear of laundry detergent on my cheek. "My name is Leela," the message read. "I didn't know about you, Juliet. I swear to God, I didn't know. He told me he was a self-made man who had gone through a messy divorce years ago. He told me the sister in the house was a tragic story. But I found his briefcase open this morning. I saw the joint savings account statements. I saw the $80,000 balance, and I saw the withdrawals." My mind immediately jumped to the bank app. I had stopped checking it daily because Marcus had taken over the high-level investing. He'd told me that the market was too volatile and that seeing the numbers fluctuate would just stress me out. "Let me handle the stress, Juliet," he'd say, kissing my forehead. "You just focus on making this house a home." I opened the app, my fingers shaking so badly I mistyped my password 3 times. When the screen finally loaded, I felt a physical pain in my chest. The balance wasn't $80,000, it was $4,200. I scrolled through the history. It was a bloodbath of withdrawals. $10,000 for venues and events, $5,000 for floral design, $3,000 for catering deposit. Then there were the smaller, more insulting charges, a $1,200 charge at a bridal boutique, a $900 charge for a men's grooming package. He had even used our joint account to pay for the engagement ring he gave her. I remembered a specific withdrawal from 3 months ago, $15,000. I had asked him about it, and he had looked me dead in the eye and told me he had moved it to a secure offshore high-yield bond to protect it from the failing domestic market. I had believed him. I had actually thanked him for being so proactive. I felt like a fool, a massive, echoing fool. I had been the silent partner in my own replacement. I had funded the flowers for my own funeral. Leela's next message appeared. He told me he wanted to start fresh. He said he finally had the money to give a woman the life she deserved. I realize now that money was yours. I've canceled the wedding. I'm at a hotel. You should check his briefcase. The sun had fully dipped below the horizon by the time I heard the familiar crunch of gravel in the driveway. Usually that sound was the highlight of my day, the signal that my partner was home and our private world could begin. But tonight it sounded like the approach of a predator. I remained on the laundry room floor for a long time, the cold tile finally numbing my legs before I forced myself to stand up. I looked in the small mirror above the utility sink. My eyes were rimmed with red, and my skin was a sickly, pale gray. I looked like a ghost. I splashed cold water on my face, dried it with one of the towels I had so carefully folded, and walked into the kitchen. I didn't turn on the lights. I sat at the mahogany table, the investment piece that was bought with lies, and waited in the shadows. I heard the car door thud shut. I heard the beep of the alarm. Then the front door opened. "Jules, you home? Why is it so dark in here?" Marcus's voice was as smooth as silk. He sounded genuinely concerned. He dropped his keys into the ceramic bowl on the entryway table, the bowl we bought on our honeymoon in Greece. I remembered that trip. We had stayed in a cheap hostel because he said we needed to save for the house. I realized now that every sacrifice he'd asked me to make was just a way to keep more of our money available for his side projects. He walked into the kitchen, smelling of expensive cologne and the outdoors. He didn't see me at first. He went straight to the fridge, grabbed a bottle of water, and took a long, casual drink.
When he finally turned and saw me sitting in the dark, he jumped. "Jesus, Juliet, you scared the life out of me. What are you doing sitting here in the dark?" He reached for the light switch, and suddenly the room was flooded with a harsh, unforgiving yellow glow. I looked at him. He was wearing a navy suit from the photo. He looked successful. He looked like the man I had adored for over a decade. "I was just thinking, Marcus," I said. My voice sounded thin, like a wire about to snap. "About what?" He walked over, intending to kiss my forehead like he did every single night. I leaned back, avoiding his touch. His hand hovered in midair for a fraction of a second, a glitch in his performance. "I was thinking about the rosewood vineyard," I whispered. The change in the room was instantaneous. It was as if the temperature had dropped 20 degrees. Marcus didn't flinch, but his eyes, they went flat. The husband mask didn't fall off, it just settled into something more rigid. "The vineyard?" he repeated, his voice careful. "I told you, Jules, the company retreat is still in the planning stages. Why are you bringing that up now? You look stressed. Maybe you should go lie down." The gaslighting was so effortless. He wasn't even trying to hide it. He was trying to overwrite my reality in real time. He moved to the cupboard to get a glass, his back to me, acting as if we were just having a casual conversation about the weather. He was waiting for me to back down, like I always did. But the Juliet who backed down had died in the laundry room 30 minutes ago.
I spoke to Leela, Marcus. The sound of the glass hitting the granite countertop was like a gunshot. He didn't drop it, but he set it down with enough force that I thought it might shatter. He didn't turn around for a long time. I watched his shoulders rise and fall as he took a deep, steadying breath. When he finally turned to face me, the boyish charm was gone. He looked older, sharper. "I don't know who that is," he said. The lie was so bold it almost took my breath away. "She sent me the photos, Marcus. She sent me the seating chart. She sent me the bank statements showing the $65,000 you stole from our Forever Fund to buy her a life, to buy her a wedding arch made of my favorite roses." He didn't move. He didn't apologize. He didn't even look guilty. Instead, he walked over to the dining chair where he'd dropped his briefcase, the one Leela had warned me about. He gripped the handle until his knuckles turned white. "You went through my things?" he asked, his voice low and dangerous. It was a classic move. Flip the script. Make me the one who had violated trust. "Your things?" I stood up, my chair screeching against the hardwood. "Our money, Marcus. Our life. I worked double shifts for years so you could have that briefcase. I ate cold soup in hospital break rooms so you could have executive suits. And you used that money to tell a 24-year-old girl that I was your unstable sister living in the guest wing?" He let out a short, cold laugh. "I had to tell her something, Juliet. You have to understand. Things between us, they've been stagnant for years. You're so obsessed with the future, with the pennies, with the spreadsheets. I felt like I was suffocating. Leela made me feel like I was a man again, not just a line item in your budget." I felt a slap of pure, unadulterated rage. A man? A man steals from his wife? A man lies to a young girl about his entire identity. You're not a man, Marcus. You're a thief. You're a coward who couldn't even ask for a divorce because you wanted to keep using my paycheck to fund your new fantasy. He stepped toward me, his face inches from mine. "I was going to pay it back. I was going to sell my shares next quarter, put the money back in the account, and you never would have known. We could have stayed together. I had it all figured out." The horror of that statement echoed in the kitchen. He genuinely believed that if I never found out, it wasn't a crime. He thought he could have a wife at home and a bride at the vineyard, and as long as the math worked out, he was a good guy. I reached over, grabbed his briefcase, and threw it across the room. It hit the wall with a heavy thud, the latches popping open.
Papers flew everywhere, contracts, receipts, and a small velvet box that skidded across the floor. I walked over and picked up the box. I opened it. Inside were a pair of diamond earrings. I recognized them. I had seen them in a catalog months ago and mentioned how beautiful they were. He had told me they were frivolous. Were these for her, too? I asked, my voice trembling. They were for the wedding, he said flatly. A morning of gift. I tucked the box into my apron pocket. Not anymore, I whispered. Consider this the first installment of the $80,000 you owe me.
Marcus didn't try to stop me when I walked out of the kitchen. He just stood there among the ruins of his secret life, surrounded by the papers that proved he was a fraud. I went to the guest room, the room he had told Leela was my wing, and I locked the door. I didn't pack a bag, I didn't cry. I sat on the edge of the bed and watched the moon climb across the sky. Every hour felt like a decade. I could hear him moving around the house. I heard him pouring another drink. I heard him pacing in the living room. At one point, I heard him on the phone, his voice hushed and frantic. He was probably calling Leela, trying to find one last lie that would stick, one last way to pull her back into his orbit. But she was gone. She had seen the bank statements. She had seen the name Juliet on the account he claimed was a family trust. I thought about our early years. I remembered a time when we lived in a tiny studio apartment with a radiator that hissed all night. We were so happy then. Or was I just happy? Was he already looking for the exit even then? I realized I had been in love with a version of Marcus that didn't exist. I had fallen in love with a shadow, a projection of the man I wanted him to be. The real Marcus was the man who could look at a seating chart and decide which of our mutual friends he would invite to his second wedding, while I was at home thinking he was at a conference. Around 3 a.m., the house went silent. I knew he had finally passed out on the sofa or retreated to our bedroom, the room we had shared for 12 years. I felt a strange sense of ownership over the silence. For the first time in a long time, I wasn't waiting for him. I wasn't wondering if he was happy or if he needed anything. I was just Juliet. I pulled out my phone and started searching. I didn't search for marriage counseling or how to heal from an affair. I searched for best forensic accountants in the city. I searched for litigation lawyers specializing in marital fraud. If Marcus wanted to treat our marriage like a business transaction, then I was going to make sure he went bankrupt. I spent the rest of the night creating a digital folder of every photo Leela had sent me, every screenshot of the bank account, and every receipt I had scavenged from the floor before I left the kitchen. By the time the sun started to rise, I had a weapon, and I was ready to use it.
The meeting with the lawyer was at 9 a.m. His name was Elias Thorne, and he had a reputation for being a shark. He sat behind a desk that looked like it cost more than my first house and looked through the documents I had printed out. He didn't say a word for 20 minutes. He just flipped through the pages, his face unreadable. Finally, he looked up. "Juliet, I've seen a lot of things in this office. I've seen people hide offshore accounts. I've seen them buy secret houses. But I have never seen someone use their joint savings to fund a second wedding while still living with the first wife. The level of audacity here is, well, it's legally significant." "What does that mean?" I asked. "It means we're not just looking at a divorce," Elias said, leaning back in his leather chair. "We're looking at wasteful dissipation of marital assets. We're looking at fraud. We're looking at a situation where the court can, and likely will, award you a significantly larger portion of the remaining assets to compensate for what he stole. And then there's the house." I told him about the email I'd found to the real estate agent. Elias smiled, but it wasn't a friendly smile. It was the smile of a man who had just found a winning lottery ticket. "He tried to sell a marital asset without your consent? That's a violation of automatic temporary restraining orders if we file today. We can freeze every single account he has. We can make it so he can't even buy a cup of coffee without the court knowing about it." I don't just want the money back, Elias, my voice firmer than it had been in years. I want him to feel the weight of every sacrifice I made. I want him to understand that he didn't just steal $80,000. He stole 12 years of my life. He used my youth to buy his fresh start. Elias nodded. We'll start with the sister narrative. We have the messages from the bride-to-be. We have her testimony that he claimed you were unstable and a dependent. That goes to character, Juliet. It proves he wasn't just confused. He was calculating. He was building a legal defense before he even committed the crime. As I walked out of his office, the air felt different. The quiet Tuesday was over. The storm had arrived, and for the first time, I wasn't the one huddled in the basement. I was the one leading the charge. I went back to the house, my house, and I changed the locks. I put Marcus's expensive suits in garbage bags and left them on the porch. I didn't care if it rained. I didn't care if someone took them. They were just fabric. The man who wore them was already gone.
The sun began to set on the day I changed the locks, casting long, skeletal shadows across the driveway. I sat by the window, hidden behind the curtain, watching and waiting. At exactly 6:15 p.m., Marcus's car turned the corner. He pulled in with his usual confidence, unaware that his world had been deconstructed while he was at work trying to perform damage control. I watched him step out of the car. He stopped dead when he saw the black garbage bags piled on the porch. He walked toward them slowly, his brow furrowed in confusion. He reached out and nudged one with his polished Italian loafer. The bag shifted, revealing the sleeve of his favorite charcoal blazer, the one he'd bought to impress Lila's parents. He looked at the bags, then at the front door. I could see the moment the realization hit him. He dropped his briefcase and lunged for the door, grabbing the handle and twisting it with a violent jerk. It didn't budge. He tried his key, shoving it into the lock with frantic, shaky hands. When the key refused to turn, he began to pound on the wood. "Juliet, Juliet, open this door! What the hell are you doing? This is my house!" I didn't answer. I didn't even move. I let him scream. I let him wake the neighbors. I let the man who called me his unstable sister look exactly like the unstable one. He moved to the window, cupping his hands around his eyes to peer through the glass. I stood my ground, staring back at him from the darkness of the kitchen. Our eyes met, and for the first time in 12 years, he saw a woman he didn't recognize. He saw the woman who had funded his MBA, yes, but he also saw the woman who was about to take everything back. "I called the police, Marcus," I said, my voice projected through the glass. "They have a copy of the emergency filing. You have no right to be here. You abandoned this marital home the moment you signed a contract for a vineyard wedding with another woman. Go to a hotel, use whatever is left of the $4,000 in the account, because that's all you're ever going to get." He looked like he wanted to break the glass, but he saw the neighbors coming out onto their porches. He saw the blue lights of a patrol car turning onto our street. His pride, the thing he valued above all else, finally crumbled. He picked up 2 of the garbage bags, threw them into his back seat, and drove away without looking back. As the sound of his engine faded, the house felt larger. It felt emptier, but for the first time in a decade, it felt like it belonged to me. 3 weeks later, we were in a sterile, windowless conference room for Marcus's deposition. The air smelled of stale coffee and expensive toner. Marcus sat across from me, flanked by a lawyer who looked like he'd been hired from a billboard. Marcus wouldn't look at me. He kept his eyes fixed on a yellow legal pad, doodling aimlessly. My lawyer, Elias, began the questioning. He was methodical, like a surgeon. He started with the basics, the dates of the marriage, the joint accounts. Then he pulled out a stack of high-gloss photos. He slid them across the table one by one. The floral arch, the gold chairs, the vineyard. "Mr. Sterling," Elias began, his voice deceptively soft, can you explain why $15,000 was moved from your joint savings account with your wife, Juliet, to the Rosewood Vineyard on March 14th? Marcus cleared his throat. It was an investment. I was looking into event spaces for my firm. An investment? Elias pulled out another document. Then why is your name listed on the contract as the groom? And why is the second party listed as Lila Vance, titled The Bride? Marcus's lawyer jumped in. Objection. My client was under significant emotional duress. This was a documented psychological lapse. A psychological lapse that lasted 6 months and cost $65,000? Elias laughed, a sharp, dry sound. Let's talk about the sister narrative, Marcus. Did you or did you not tell Miss Vance that your wife, the woman sitting across from you, was your mentally unstable sister who lived in a guest wing? The silence in the room was suffocating. I watched Marcus's jaw clench. He finally looked up, and for a split second I saw the old Marcus, the one who thought he could talk his way out of anything. I did it to protect her. I didn't want Lila to know the truth yet. I was trying to find a way to transition out of the marriage without hurting Juliet's feelings. By stealing her life savings? I spoke up, breaking the silence. My lawyer didn't stop me. By selling our house while I was sleeping in it? Is that how you protect someone, Marcus? He looked at me, and the mask finally cracked. You were always so boring, Juliet. Everything was about the budget. Everything was about the future. I wanted a life that felt like a movie. I wanted someone who looked at me like I was a king, not a banker. And you paid for that look with my blood and sweat. You're not a king. You're just a thief in a navy suit.
The judge didn't take long to reach a decision. The evidence was too overwhelming, the betrayal too calculated. In the final hearing, the courtroom was nearly empty, save for the court reporter and a few bored onlookers. Marcus looked smaller than I had ever seen him. His expensive suit was starting to look frayed at the edges. The judge, a woman with iron-gray hair and eyes that could see through a brick wall, looked down at Marcus. Mr. Sterling, in my 20 years on the bench, I have seen many cases of marital infidelity, but the level of financial elder-type abuse, treating your wife as a silent, unwilling lender for a second life, is particularly loathsome. You didn't just break a vow, you committed a systematic fraud against your partner. She turned her gaze to me. The court finds that the defendant has engaged in the purposeful dissipation of marital assets. As such, the court awards 100% of the equity of the marital home to the plaintiff, Juliet Sterling. Furthermore, the court awards the entirety of the defendant's 401k and pension as restitution for the $80,000 stolen from the joint accounts. Mr. Sterling, you are also ordered to pay the plaintiff's legal fees in full. Marcus's lawyer tried to protest, citing future livelihood, but the judge cut him off with a sharp rap of her gavel. Your client can rebuild his livelihood. He cannot rebuild the 12 years of life he stole from this woman. We are adjourned. I walked out of the courtroom into the bright afternoon sun. I felt lighter, as if a physical weight had been lifted from my shoulders. I saw Marcus standing on the courthouse steps, talking frantically to his lawyer. He looked lost. He looked like the man he had always been underneath the suits, a man who had no foundation of his own. He had built his life on my back, and now that I had walked away, he was collapsing. I didn't feel joy. I didn't feel revenge. I just felt done. I realized that the $80,000 was never just money. It was the price of my freedom, and for the first time in my life, I felt like it was a bargain.
1 year later. I stood in the laundry room of my house. The scent of lavender detergent was the same, but the energy in the room was different. I wasn't folding his shirts anymore. I was folding my own. bright, colorful linens for a trip I was taking to Italy, alone. I had sold the mahogany dining table, I'd sold the navy suits he'd left behind. I had used the money to repaint the house in colors he had always hated, soft teals and vibrant yellows. Every corner of the home now reflected me, not a partnership where I was the only one doing the work. I received a letter in the mail that morning. It was from a collection agency. Marcus had defaulted on his car payments. He had lost his job at the firm after the details of the fraud became public knowledge. Turns out, companies don't like hiring senior VPs who steal from their wives. He was living in a small apartment on the edge of the city, working as a junior clerk. He had tried to call me a few months ago, crying, asking for a second chance to talk. I had blocked his number before he could finish the sentence. I thought about the Rosewood Vineyard. I had gone back there a few weeks ago. Not to cry and not to mourn. I went there to have lunch with Leela. We had stayed in touch, the two sister wives of a con man. She was doing well. She had used the refund from her dress to start a small floral business. We sat on the patio overlooking the very spot where the arch had been planned. "You know," Leela said, sipping her wine, "he told me he picked this place because it reminded him of a dream he once had. He didn't tell me the dream was actually your life." "He didn't have any dreams of his own, Leela," I said. "He just knew how to shop in other people's hearts." As I finished packing my suitcase, I looked at the $4,200 balance on my new private bank account. It wasn't $80,000, but it was mine. It represented my peace, my hard work, and my future. I realized then that the most expensive mistake Marcus ever made wasn't stealing the money. It was assuming that without him I would be nothing. I walked out the front door, locked it, and didn't look back. The unstable sister was gone. The routine wife was gone. There was only Juliet, and Juliet had a plane to catch.
Betrayal doesn't always come with a loud explosion. Sometimes it's a quiet Tuesday afternoon and a phone that won't stop buzzing. But as Juliet learned, the end of a lie is the beginning of your power. Marcus thought he could finance a new life with the remains of his old one, but karma had a different receipt waiting for him. He wanted to be a king on a throne built of stolen bricks, but in the end, he was left with nothing but the dust. If you stayed with us until the very end of this hour-long journey, thank you. This story is a reminder to all of us that our intuition is a gift. If something feels off, it usually is. What part of Juliet's story resonated with you the most? Was it the moment she changed the locks or the lunch she had with Lila? Let us know in the comments below. Your comments help other survivors feel less alone. If you haven't already, please hit that like button. It helps the algorithm share Juliet's story with others who might need to hear it today. Subscribe to Echoes of Trust and Betrayal and click the notification bell so you never miss a chapter of our community's journey. Remember, your worth is not defined by who stayed or who lied. Your worth is defined by your courage to stand back up. We'll see you in the next story. Be kind to yourselves tonight.